Today on Notsam Wrestling, what does the future of the Judgment Day hold? The Wyatt Sicks finally get in the ring and say it with me. Say it with me. The Tribal Chief, Roman Reigns, is back. This is Notsam Wrestling. Welcome to Notsam Wrestling. And just as it should have, Summerslam has changed everything. We've had a ton of programming as far as Notsam Wrestling goes, both during and coming off of SummerSlam. Of course, we did the live Notsam Wrestling podcast, of Hilarities, which all of you guys that were there in Cleveland know how fantastic it was. If you weren't there, make sure you're there for the next one. We'll be at Fanatics Fest the Saturday and the Sunday doing some special shows. But, it was a really special Thursday night show. We had Bully Ray there, and then also, of course, Drew McIntyre 2 days before the big CM Punk match. And that interview in its entirety, the full segment that we did at the live show with Drew McIntyre, is up on the Notsam Wrestling YouTube channel. So if you were there live and you want to see it, or you didn't get a chance to make it out to Cleveland on Thursday and you want to see this interview, it was phenomenal. Drew was incredible, and I would recommend going out and going out of your way to watch that interview. Also, so many feelings coming off of SummerSlam. Immediately after the show went off the air, Megan Morant and myself came down to the Notsam studio and did a reaction show. So if you just want the feelings, you know that's what the emergency podcast is all about here on Notsam Wrestling. We did that show, Megan and I, right after SummerSlam. So that's where we went over every single match that was on the show. And I would definitely check that out when you get a chance, maybe after you listen to today's Notsam Wrestling, but we've got to talk about it. It's almost like the world has changed because it's back to normal to an extent. Roman Reigns returns at SummerSlam, and it was one of those moments that they told you without telling you was coming. You know, watching Solo Sikoa evolve from... I talked to Roman after WrestleMania. He said, I am the Tribal Chief. Actually, Roman's not coming back. Now we're taking out Paul Heyman. Now, if Roman has anything to say and he doesn't like this, he can say it to my face. And then finally, Roman was weak, and that's why he's not the Tribal Chief anymore. You can't just be spouting off at the mouth, no matter what kind of break Roman Reigns is on. You can't just be uttering that man's name with disrespect and not expect that he's going to show up. And so, I mean, it was, but we don't know, right? The stranger things have happened where it's like, it feels like the writing's on the wall that Roman Reigns is coming back, and then he doesn't come back. So when he does, the fact that we actually got the thing that we hoped was happening, I think makes it that much better. I was also watching and realizing that save for LA Knight, it was a pretty heel-heavy night. Lots of villains were winning, and it was almost like it made sense the way all the villains won. Everybody that should have won their matches are the people that won their matches at SummerSlam. But like, there wasn't one result that I questioned on that show. But I also thought, just in terms of showing up, like, there were a lot of CM Punk fans that showed up and wanted to see CM Punk win. There are a lot of Rhea Ripley fans that show up and want to see Rhea Ripley walk out with the championship. Like, there are a lot of Sami Zayn fans that, as much as they understand Braun Breaker's got to have this one, don't want to see Sami Zayn get laid out. So how, at the end of the night, are you going to make it up to him? It's hard to believe that Cody Rhodes is just going to walk in and beat Solo Sikoa like nothing, because then what was Solo talking about? If Cody Rhodes just walks into SummerSlam and beats Solo Sikoa, then April to August hasn't really been for anything. Because it's like, unless you're telling the story of like Jacob coming for Solo's spot or something like that, it just doesn't make sense. So I go, the only thing that could probably make people feel better after all these villains won their matches would be if the biggest babyface in wrestling, Roman Reigns returns. And that he did, and you know, we talked about it on the emergency podcast, but of course, Roman comes out. The strength of Roman Reigns in terms of a performer, in that he doesn't come out sort of going, ooh, I'm here, I'm going to soak it all in, and then give it a beat, and I wonder what I'm going to do. I haven't quite decided yet. As a character, he was there for a specific reason. He didn't necessarily want to help Cody Rhodes. In fact, I don't think he wanted to help Cody Rhodes at all. But as soon as he stepped into the ring, there was no sort of Solo. Did you really say what I think you said? It was immediately put Solo down, nod at Cody Rhodes, like, yeah, I'm not hurting you. That's yours now, and leave. You could tell upon leaving that he felt, you know, some kind of way about helping Cody Rhodes, the person who was holding the title that he had. But this morning, I'm watching with my son, who loves Roman and loves Cody. He loves baby faces, you know. He's a good kid. And as Roman's walking out, I go, Bud, who do you think Roman's going to attack? Is it going to be Solo, who's taking over the bloodline? Or is it going to be Cody Rhodes, who took Roman's title? And he goes, Dad, there's more important things in life than a title. A title is just a title, but that's family. And that's what Solo Sikoa took over. And I was like, yeah, dude, let's get Solo. And Roman took him out. I watched it again. It was fantastic. And then Roman leaves with Cody looking on, realizing that while tonight Roman was helpful in getting past Solo Sikoa, Cody realizes that going forward, Roman's presence is anything but helpful to Cody's reign as undisputed WWE champion. But the question obviously comes up, right? Because I just described Roman Reigns as the top babyface in wrestling. And is that to say that he's come in and taken Cody Rhodes' spot? I think a couple of things. Number one, there was only one way this was ever going to go. And as a matter of fact, before any of the, way before WrestleMania, way before, I said from the beginning that the way this story works is eventually Roman loses the title, whether it's at WrestleMania, whether it's at Bash in Berlin, whether it's after he beats the Hogan streak, whatever it is. Roman loses the title, and when Roman loses the title, he goes away. And once Roman loses the title and goes away, he's a babyface. Because that's when there's a period put on this extended sentence that we've been saying ever since the bloodline began. And we're allowed to look back on what this sentence really was, appreciate it, and immediately say, man, Roman is a once-in-a-lifetime guy. There's no option but to make him a babyface. The minute, not just the minute that he comes back, the minute he leaves. People have been chanting, we want Roman since the Friday after WrestleMania. I don't think it takes anything away from Cody Rhodes. I don't think this idea of, that there's this sort of rigid, structured, well, there's one top babyface and he's the guy and that's it. Says who? What are you talking about? Why would that be? First of all, Roman isn't going to wrestle as often as Cody Rhodes is. Whether he's a good guy or a bad guy, it's just not going to happen. And he shouldn't. That's not who Roman Reigns is regardless. But even so, you can be a Roman Reigns guy, you can be a Cody Rhodes guy, or you can like both. You're acting as if there's only room, well, there can only be one top guy. And if you're not the top guy, who are you? I don't know. Ask Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. Because the last time wrestling was this hot, there were two top baby faces. It was Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. As a matter of fact, the success of the Attitude Era, I believe, the same way the success of ECW is not just about like the blood and guts of it, the barbed wire, the profanity, the this, the that. The success of ECW, I think, has just as much to do with all that as it does the psychology of the product that was being presented. That you had created this organization full of homegrown talent and characters that you were completely locked into and on board with, that were creations of ECW. You associated with that brand. When you go to the Attitude Era and you talk about how culturally relevant and what a phenomenon WWE was during the Attitude Era, that's not just because, they could, tell people to suck it and it was a risque show. No, it has just as much, if not more, to do with the fact that star power was at an all-time high. The Attitude Era had an incredible main event scene where you've got Austin and The Rock, and you've got this conversation of the fact that there isn't a clear top babyface. And then you've still got The Undertaker, and you've got Kane, and you've got Mankind, and you've got Triple H. And you got The Big Show, and you have all these clear legends that are right there. Just the fact that there's a conversation of, well, who's the top babyface? Because if he's not the top babyface, then it doesn't. No. It's great. The fact that in this era, we've got Roman Reigns, who's this extremely complicated character, but has become beloved with the entire audience because the audience is starting to acknowledge, for lack of a better term, that the work that Roman has done has elevated professional wrestling to something else. That generations after this, people will go, yes, that started with the Bloodline story. Drew McIntyre, if you watch the interview that we did on Thursday before SummerSlam, he says that the Bloodline is the story that proved what you can do with storytelling, that the fact that you have 52 weeks a year and no offseason can be a good thing in the sense that you can use those 52 weeks to really build characters and build characters over time and live in a world where, rule number 3, everything counts. And I think that people are going to credit that to the Bloodline and what the Bloodline did in and coming out of the pandemic era and going forward, telling wrestling stories in a completely different way than they had been told before. At the same time, until Cody Rhodes, the idea of the pure wrestling babyface was dead. The idea of wrestling can still have clearly defined good guys that act like they're good guys, that don't try to be like cool bad guy good guys, but just straight up red, white, and blue baby faces that are beloved by men, women, and children, no matter where they go. It hasn't happened since 1988, 1989. It hasn't happened since Hogan. After Hogan, you've got like Brett and Shawn, which both superstars were polarizing. Brett not as much, but Brett never fully got the rocket for an extended period of time. And Shawn was completely polarizing. Some people loved him, some people hated him. In New York, they booed him. In Texas, they cheered him. It was just one of those things. Then you get into the Attitude Era where you've got Austin. And Austin is the anti-hero. And that's what everybody was kind of designed. The hero became the anti-hero because you had to be that cool hero. The Rock the same way. The Rock was an anti-hero. Coming off of the Attitude Era, you had people like maybe Batista, but ultimately, the next top guy, it went Hogan, it went Austin, and then right there, The Rock, and then it went John Cena. And John Cena played the role of the traditional babyface, but kids cheered him, some women cheered him, and no men cheered him. John Cena sucks. Let's go, Cena. Cena sucks. Sometimes they tried to lean into it. Sometimes they tried to ignore it. But it wasn't that thing. It wasn't that thing that when it was 1988, and Hulk Hogan would walk into an arena or a stadium, no matter where he was, everyone was going nuts. And that hasn't happened. And then they tried it again with Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns was the guy they tried to make the next Cena. And it didn't work. He wasn't ready. The fans weren't ready. They weren't presenting him properly. He didn't come across as genuine. And it didn't happen. And then you've got Cody Rhodes. So now you've got this WWE where you've got Cody Rhodes, who is the type of performer that we all thought was gone, never to be heard from again, who has brought this thing back and done it in such a modern way where it feels real and you can actually get behind it. And there is a richness to the story. And then you've got a guy like Roman Reigns, who had to change everything in order for people to see how good he really was. And we get to this place where we're in a WWE and on a SmackDown brand where you've got Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes for the first time as your 1A, 1B, Rock Austin babyface duo. And I think that that's kind of the way it's going to be going forward. And you're going to be able to keep them separated. Roman Reigns has plenty to do over here with the bloodline. There's plenty of other people here for Cody Rhodes to deal with. But eventually when they get together, you're going to have a brand new dynamic when you get to Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns 3. When should it happen? At a WrestleMania. Is it going to happen this year at WrestleMania? I don't know. Maybe the final boss is back this year. I don't know. But eventually it happens at a WrestleMania. Because who were the last two people? I don't know if they were. No, they probably weren't the last two. But who are two people that main evented 3 WrestleManias? I will say the last two people that main evented 3 WrestleManias, although I guess the last one wasn't a main event, but had that WrestleMania trilogy. When you talk about WrestleMania trilogies, who do you think about? Austin and The Rock, Cody and Roman. And I think that's what you've got. And that's what you've got now going forward with these two characters. It's an amazing, amazing thing, you know? I mean, I think when you look at it, I was thinking about the fact that this year at the Royal Rumble will be 10 years removed from Philly. Will be 10 years removed from Royal Rumble 2015, I believe, when Roman Reigns got booed out of the building, when The Rock raised his cousin's hand and then looked confused as everybody was booing him. Because when Roman Reigns first showed up with the Shield, people did look at him as, yo, Roman Reigns is the man. People loved Roman Reigns. Like, that, before it was anointed and everybody could tell that he's just the guy, people loved him. But then it became, he's our guy. And no matter what happens, he's going all the way. And people went, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not really feeling that anymore. And then his character started to evolve and people didn't get behind it. But 2015 is that first time that they tried to make him the guy and everybody said no. And they spent a long time trying to make him the guy and everybody spent a long time saying no. But ultimately, if I told you, look, I have this guy, and if you just stick with him for 10 years, and it's going to be a rocky road for the first half, but if you can give me a decade and stick by that guy, we can make him Roman Reigns big. I go, yeah, that's worth the investment. Yeah, I'll put the decade in. If we can get Roman Reigns at the end of it, yeah, I'll put that decade in. And it'll be interesting to see how this version of Roman Reigns evolves out of it, because it's the first time I think we're going to get a babyface Roman that everybody's like, yeah, we're cheering for him. This is who we're here to see. And in this era of WWE, we boo the bad guys. We cheer the good guys. we saw the Randy Orton and Kevin Owens return. Arn Anderson was able to bring him back. And they took out Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa. So we're not any closer as of yet to a Cody rivalry with KO or Randy Orton. It feels like the bloodline thing is going to continue with Cody Rhodes, but we'll see. The world is different now, and I think SmackDown is gonna start to paint that picture for everybody. I still, as of right now, as of this recording, we haven't heard any official confirmation on the status of Jacob Fatu, who hit his leg on the table as he came down on Cody Rhodes. And it really did look like he was hurt. At the same time, the timing of everything that happened at the end of SummerSlam was perfect, and the injury allowed Roman Reigns to put his hands on Solo Sikoa without Jacob Fatu being there to have his back. So if he is really injured and he's out for any period of time, that sucks. However, not only did it not take away from that big spot at the end, but if anything, him being injured added to it, which is why I hope that it's, that he's just selling an injury. And he happens to be very, very good. And the idea that he's very, very good at selling an injury couldn't come as a shock to anybody because he's so very, very good at literally everything else in wrestling. So the idea that Jacob Fatu would also be able to make you believe that he was hurt, I think is feasible. And I hope that that's what's going on. Cody Rhodes at the press conference did say, look, Cody versus Roman 3 has to happen, which is very, very exciting. And, we, of course, end up questioning where certain people are. Specifically, where is Jimmy Uso? Where does Jey Uso fall into all this? And where's the wise man? I had thought, it's probably the only thing that I really got incorrect at SummerSlam. I had thought that when Roman returned, he'd have Paul Heyman by his side. And instead, he was completely by himself, which I think ended up being a stronger image, having Roman come back completely by himself. Because now that he's a babyface Roman Reigns, everything that he says kind of has to be a little bit more true, meaning if he's the head of the table, he's got to have the ability to believably take out the bloodline by himself. Right? Like there's no other influence going on here. And I think that image brought that across for sure when we saw what we saw at SummerSlam. I do wonder, because everybody's talked about Hikuleo, who is Haku's third son. Haku's two sons, Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa. Hikuleo is his third son. He's about 7 feet tall and has apparently signed a deal with WWE at some point. These are the rumors on the internet. So maybe the idea is that Jacob Fatu goes out with this injury, worked or not, and Hikuleo comes in. And it's just more, because ultimately, Jacob Fatu versus Roman Reigns is the match. Of course, Solo Sikoa this, but the match is Jacob versus Roman. So maybe the idea is Roman has to go through the bloodline to get to Solo, and eventually Jacob steps up and is the threat, and the way we avoid going to the threat right away is with the injury. I don't know, but we are definitely on an amazing road going forward. And if SmackDown this week opens up with the Tribal Chiefs music and Roman Reigns has a microphone, just imagine the power at this point of Roman Reigns, who we have not heard from since WrestleMania. Roman Reigns walking down the aisle to that music and standing in that ring alone with a microphone to tell his side of the story. I'm going to have goosebumps again. I'm going to have goosebumps on my goosebumps. These things are going to end up permanent by the time this year is over. Because what an astronomically cool year it's already been. And we've only just entered August. And as we enter August, everybody's talking about the Judgment Day. And there were some that were saying, this is it. SummerSlam is the end of the Judgment Day. We can put a fork in them. They're done. I disagree. I think these stories are a little bit more complex than people want to give credit to. At SummerSlam, both Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest were screwed by members of the Judgment Day. Rhea Ripley betrayed by Dominic Mysterio, and Damian Priest betrayed by Finn Balor. Which, again, if you really just watch the show and track these characters, you could kind of see where it's happening, because by the time we got to SummerSlam, Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest are clearly babyfaces. I mean, basically at WrestleMania, Rhea Ripley for sure, and kind of Damian Priest too, were already babyfaces. At no point have they been really heels. And to the point that, even while Rhea Ripley's been gone, Damian Priest has not been on the same page of the Judgment Day at all. In fact, he's been very judgmental of some of the things that, Dominic Mysterio and Finn Balor have done. I think he's been a bad teammate of the Judgment Day, but I was a big part of me going into this. And not until the day before did I feel this way. But man, if I wasn't looking at those social media posts of Dominic Mysterio and Rhea Ripley together and going, I don't know if they break these two up. Because I thought, you've told the story. Dom and Rhea, Dirty Dom, Daddy Dom, whatever, and Rhea Ripley, we've told that story. Except the minute Rhea took him back and we started seeing him together, the chemistry was right back. The fun of watching those two perform together was right back. And it was do you understand the level of heat that this is going to get if Liv Morgan and Dominic Mysterio screw over Rhea Ripley and Liv and Dominic end up together? Rhea Ripley is so popular that even though Dominic Mysterio gets booed out of every arena that he goes into, she made him lovable. People were like, oh, all right, it's fun. It's the opposite with Liv. And that's part of the story too, right? That Dominic makes it so you can't cheer for Liv Morgan. Rhea makes it so you can't boo Dominic. Or you can, but we're having fun. Dominic makes it now so you can't cheer Liv Morgan even if you wanted to. And I think that is kind of the story of what we've got with Dominic, that Dominic has gotten to this place where he is such a big star himself, and he has become such an attraction himself in the WWE that he's not a side character anymore. And there can never come a time when Rhea Ripley is oh yeah, she's complimentary to Dom and she bigs him up, but ultimately that relationship is predicated upon Rhea is the boss, Rhea wears the pants, and Dom is the lapdog. Dom, in his star power, has ascended lapdoggedness. And Liv Morgan, who you don't trust as a character, can be that person that is just oh, no, I'm just here to follow Daddy Dom. Dom's the dude. I'm just here to follow him. I'm here to follow his lead. I worship him. We haven't seen that version of Dominic Mysterio. And I think that it's time to see that version of Dominic Mysterio. Obviously, there's something going on with Finn Balor, and we knew this in the storytelling that was going on between the courtship of Liv Morgan and Dominic Mysterio, where Finn Balor would be in odd spots, right? Finn Balor would get out of the same car that Liv Morgan was in, or Finn Balor would be the one to take the hotel key card. So I had wondered if Finn Balor was going to be the one that turned on both Dominic and Rhea, and Liv Morgan went away with Finn Balor. It feels more like maybe, at least in the short term, we're going to find out that Liv and Dom have this love connection, but Finn Balor is the brain behind all of this. And maybe that evolves into Liv and Finn Balor end up together, but I don't really think so, because if Liv leaves Dominic Mysterio for Finn Balor's a heel, but Dominic Mysterio at that point has nothing. Like, he's pathetic at that point. Unless you can somehow turn that kid into a babyface, which, why would you? I don't know how much sense it would make, but it would make sense for Finn Balor to be the evil genius behind all of this, right? And maybe it was Liv Morgan at one point, but Finn Balor was like, Liv, let me talk to you. Here's my plan. You and Dom go do whatever you and Dom are going to do. I'm not here for that. I'm here for business. And I'm realizing that Damian Priest's eye is off the prize. And I'm realizing that Rhea Ripley's eye is off the prize. And if those two want to do what those two are going to do, that's fine. But I think the Judgment Day can be stronger. And I think you look at a Judgment Day with Balor and McDonough, with Dominic, and with Liv Morgan. I don't know who gets custody of Carlito. This is why, by the way, I said, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we're not getting a custody of Dominic Mysterio match. It doesn't make sense in a narrative way in any way, shape, or form. It just doesn't, you can't get there and have everybody come out better for it. You can get there and have a lot of people come out worse for it if you really need your moment, but you can't get there with the story that's being told. Carlito, and it's really interesting because Carlito is like the villain version of R-Truth at this point. To the point where, like, I love when Carlito's on my television set. I just wonder who's going to get custody of Carlito and if there's even room for Carlito. Because it seems like this is going to be a pretty serious rivalry between the Judgment Day and the former members of the Judgment Day. And I don't know if Carlito would be involved in anything that serious right now based on who that character is, but we'll see. I do think that there's still room for Jey Uso in all this. And like I said, I think it was last week, I don't think that you need to go the romance angle with Jey Uso and Rhea Ripley. I think Jey Uso and Rhea Ripley should just be, Jay's there to be like, look, Rhea, you got to get your mind off this. Let's go have some fun. And that's it. You don't make it this weird, like, obsession romance thing, because the Dominic of it all is its own unique force. The idea that Jey Uso and Rhea Ripley are just hanging, having fun while Rhea's dealing with all this is an interesting thing. Finn Balor and Damian Priest have a score to settle, which means that Rhea and Damian Priest in a mixed tag versus Liv and Dom makes no sense, because Damian Priest hates Dominic Mysterio, but his bigger problem is with Finn Balor. Instead, it feels much more like, and they're not in the Judgment Day anymore, so it feels much more like Rhea teams with our other friend Jey Uso to face Liv Morgan and Dominic Mysterio, while Damian Priest takes care of Finn Balor. And by the way, while all this is going on, Roman is doing what he's doing on SmackDown. And by the time Jey Uso is done being involved with his pal Rhea Ripley and her rivalry with Dominic Mysterio and Liv Morgan, by the time those mixed tags are done, Survivor Series is at the door in Vancouver. Maybe it's time for Jey Uso to take a peek into what the Bloodline is doing. So Jey Uso's got the Rhea Ripley thing, then he's got the Bloodline, wins the Royal Rumble, faces Gunther at WrestleMania. This is what I have for Jey Uso. I see the Rhea Ripley mixed tag thing as a very big plus. I think it's a great spot for him right now and can lead him to a spot where by April, he's in the main event of night one. But we'll see, who's to say? I do wonder if there's any way to bring the Demon back to face Damian Priest. Because you would think that Damian Priest has to beat Finn Balor. But if you're going to, like, there's no more beating the Demon. If you're going to beat the Demon, don't bother bringing the Demon back. Like, it's silly. If you're going to beat the Demon, then it's just Finn Balor with face paint on. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, it should mean something. Oh, boy, the Demon's here. So, because this is so personal, I would love to see, and maybe that is, right? Because right now, it's like Finn Balor hasn't been in the world title picture for a long time. That's not to say he doesn't deserve to be. That's not to say at any moment he couldn't be again, but he hasn't been. So maybe the idea of making him a serious threat immediately is to bring that Demon back. We saw that mean face on Finn Balor at SummerSlam. Bring that Demon back. And maybe the Demon does beat Damian Priest. And then Damian Priest is able to get a victory or two back against Finn Balor. I don't know. I also wonder, does a heel Demon even work? Would anybody boo the Demon? Because it's so much fun to see. Most of me thinks probably not. And of course, with all this stuff, where does Gunther go after all this? Because it feels like the Judgment Day is almost self-sufficient over here. So Gunther needs a new set of opponents, but I don't think that's going to be difficult. Ilya may be. Gunther may face Ilya on Raw. You know what I mean? I think Ilya is going to be right there. I think at some point you're going to get Gunther Kaiser. There's plenty of people on Raw for Gunther to face. Speaking of people wrestling on Raw, I'm so glad this is happening. Number one, because it was a great segment. First and foremost, because it was a great segment. But number two, because I love it when the haters get shut up, finally. Like, I told you it was a pet peeve that people kept looking at the Wyatt Sicks and going, that was good, but, well, they got to get in the ring. Oh, they look amazing, but aren't they going to have to take their masks off? Like, no matter how many good Wyatt Sicks segments there were, it was, yeah, that's good, but, they're going to have to get in the ring. If it's good, let it be good. In the era that we're in right now, and I could understand if this were 5 years ago, when you could have a good segment, like when the Nexus happened. You could have this amazing segment and it just goes down the toilet just as quick. That doesn't happen anymore. Hasn't happened in a while. Under this regime, I would argue that was a good segment, but they have no idea how to follow up and it's going to go down the toilet. Hasn't been happening. So if it hasn't been happening, would you just give it the benefit of the doubt? And if you like the segment, don't go, but next week's might not be good. Why? This week's was. Yeah, I know this week's was, but next week's. So needless to say, when the Wyatt Sicks came to the ring, and when Gacy, Eric Rowan, and Dexter Lumis took their masks off, and you saw they still look awesome even with the masks off. Because, number one, it's Eric Rowan. But number two, Joe Gacy looks awesome. And Dexter Lumis, look at this new Dexter Lumis. I wouldn't have even recognized him. As I've described him, the version of Rob Zombie that would scare Rob Zombie with the dreadlocks coming down. Legit dreadlocks, not the ones on the mask, legit, with the eye circles and the X in his head. Looked awesome. And then Gacy, Rowan, and Lumis get in the ring. They're not trying to pretend it's somebody else. They're not, who is that? I've never seen them before. Like, we know who it is. That's the point. It's this supernatural world that is firmly based in reality. That's what makes this different. And they've been telling you that from the beginning. But people are still like, yeah, but I don't know, this spooky stuff. Just pay attention to what's going on the screen. Half the time, it'll answer your questions. So, we see them. They look great in the ring. They're moving fast. They're doing forceful moves. And then the announcement is made that we're going to get the 6-man tag between Gable and the Creeds and the Wyatt Sicks. And it won't be traditional wrestling. It'll still be character-based. It'll still be character-heavy. Yes, 100%. But it's a group of wrestlers that are going to be able to have matches and tell stories. And that's what it's all about right now. I can't wait to see it. But that's it is the story. That's why people loved SummerSlam so much. Because there were so many stories being told. And there's a lot to talk about with Punk and Drew and Seth, but we talked about that so much on the SummerSlam reaction emergency podcast that I would head over there. Another thing I was going to do an emergency podcast about, if I hadn't been preparing for Cleveland on Wednesday and then driving all the way there Thursday, doing the show, by the time you get to Friday, you drive back, now it's Friday night, too late. But I would have done an emergency podcast on the photo that shocked the wrestling world. On Wednesday morning, we saw a photo, and it was like, I mean, you know, in a world that we live in, where everybody's got a 2,000 megapixel camera on their phone, that we couldn't get a better picture than this is a little bit surprising, but we still got a picture. It was a meeting room, and it was Tony Khan on one side of the table, and it was Shane McMahon, Shane O'Mac, on the other side of the table. It was unmistakable. And they were both looking at the camera, and you couldn't tell if they were like, yo, what are you doing? Or if they were like, okay, go ahead, take the picture. Don't know. But Shane McMahon reportedly, I mean, he definitely met with Tony Khan. That meeting happened. Reportedly, it was in like a private airport, like a meeting room in a private airport. Looked very much planned, obviously. It's not like they just saw each other in the airport and went, hey, there's a meeting room over here. Hope you don't have a flight to catch or anything. No, I come to airports all the time just to hang. So I'm assuming it was planned. You know, this has been something that people had kind of been talking about, this idea of what if. I think that Shane McMahon did give a quote to Bubba Ray Dudley, to Bully Ray for Busted Open, which was really, really cool. But, I mean, man, I look at that and I marvel at the state of professional wrestling in 2024. Same week, by the way, that Stephanie McMahon is front row at SummerSlam and Triple H is at the press conference talking about how Steph loves wrestling, grew up with wrestling, loves this stuff. And I thought something really sweet that he said, which made me go like, yeah, man, that's what it's all about, is that he said it's much easier for her to love now. And I think it's a complete tragedy when something that you love is taken away from you in the sense that you're not able to enjoy it anymore because of whatever reason. And when you can get that back, it's like never let it go. I thought that was an awesome quote by Triple H, but I also thought it was very ironic that we're talking about Stephanie over here, when over on the other side of the fence, Shane O'Mac, as if it's, you know, the name on the contract says McMahon, but it says Shane McMahon. What? Shane McMahon is in the room with Tony Khan, and of course there's no official word on anything. Do I want there to be something? God, more than I want to breathe. Just because of what a great story it would be. Just because of how much fun it would be to talk about. This idea that, what? Shane McMahon is all elite? And a lot of people were talking about it from the perspective of an in-ring performer, right? But if Shane signed, there were some people that were like, he'd get lost, you know, in the shuffle. Like, what are you talking about? It's Shane McMahon. He's not coming to just be a wrestler. He's Shane McMahon, you know, he's coming to have a big stake. As a matter of fact, that's probably the only reason why I think this might not end up being a thing. It has nothing to do with the money, because the money's there. It has nothing to do with whether or not Tony thinks it would be great to have a brain like Shane McMahon around, whether Shane McMahon thinks that he would have fun doing this. I think all the answers to those questions are yes. The only thing that holds it back is, I think ultimately Shane, and rightfully so, would say, I want, you know, this much power. I want this much autonomous power if I'm going to come in. And I don't know that Tony Khan is the type of guy that likes to give any chunks of autonomous power. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I've never even met Tony Khan. And I know Shane McMahon a thimbleful. So I'm not speaking out of experience in any of this. I'm just speaking based on the people that we've gotten to know from watching wrestling I know them as well as you know them from watching professional wrestling for all the years that we've been watching professional wrestling. And it seems like the move would be for Shane to come in and have a big hand in what's going on. And I don't know that Tony Khan would want to give him a big hand in what's going on. But I mean, I would love it if he did. Just to see. Just because could you imagine if? I love that we're in an era where there are things that you're like, so many could you imagine if scenarios have and are actually happening. CM Punk just had a match at Summerslam in 2024. So much is happening that was never supposed to happen. So, because I love that energy so much, I badly want Shane McMahon to do something at AEW just to see what it looks like. I want him to be on screen. I want him to be behind the scenes. I want the whole thing to get shaken up. You know, it doesn't make me happy when I read stories like, oh, you know, whatever. Two of the talent at AEW got into a backstage squabble and one of them got suspended. It's like all that stuff is not good for business. It's not good for the business of AEW. It's not good for the business of professional wrestling. But wild stuff happening, like Shane McMahon showing up in the rival promotion, that's good for wrestling. That's good for the business as a whole. And that's the stuff that I like. That's the stuff that I'm into, going like, woo! What's going to happen next? It's very, very exciting, and I get very, very excited by it. What can I tell you? I mean, you know, when you talk about the impossible happening, some of that impossible is the stories that we read from Joe Hendry, who we believe in, right? And the way he describes it, and I guess, I mean, it makes sense. You don't have to be a genius to figure this out. But he said that he has gotten this amazing, unprecedented deal that allows him to compete regularly in TNA, in NXT, on the indies, and even train at the Performance Center. I don't know if that's Joe Hendry specific or just everybody from TNA that's being used in NXT as well. Like, you know, I would imagine the Rascals have a similar situation. I don't think that the NXT stars can kind of go work the indies or wherever they want. But I think that because TNA stars can work indies, and now there's this deal between NXT and TNA, it allows certain talents to get booked by all of those parties. And why not? If they're going to be around, of course they can train at the PC. That's what it's there for, right? I mean, why would you turn that down? I think it's a great relationship. At one point, I wondered if the move that WWE was making was to eventually buy TNA. But a bigger part of me wonders if this is just similar to, you know, WWE would do things to help keep USWA going, to help keep Smoky Mountain Wrestling going, to help keep ECW going. They bought ECW out of bankruptcy court. They would send major talent to Memphis, to the USWA. Vince was cutting heel promos. Macho Man Randy Savage would go down. And I think that Macho Man also went down to Smoky Mountain Wrestling too, because he wrestled Bruiser Bedlam down there. It was a little bit different because that was all that was still in the mid-90s, inching toward the late 90s, but mid-90s, when like that stuff was still on local television, so the whole world didn't necessarily find out, and the internet was kind of in its infancy from a consumer point of view. But still, I mean, there's always been like a thought that if we can help keep some of these smaller organizations alive, they're not competitive, so it won't hurt us, and it keeps the business healthy. So why wouldn't we keep doing that? And I hope that that's the vision for what's going on with TNA, because I think it has been really, really good for everybody. I think that it's created more interest in NXT as it is headed to the CW. So really good timing. And that's not necessarily because of this like big star power. It's more just because this is so cool that it's happening. And that in turn is also, I mean, if you just look at numbers, like it's been really good for TNA as well. There have been some that have been like, well, I don't know, the TV ratings haven't gone up. They're selling out shows. And I guarantee you their pay-per-view numbers are up. You know, there's only so much you can do for TV ratings when even if you want to find the show, you can't find it. But the fact that they're selling out big shows and the fact that people are watching their pay-per-views, you know, clearly it's been beneficial to everyone involved, and I hope it stays that way. And then finally, one of the big notes from the SummerSlam countdown show is that after the announcement was made a month or so ago that Joe Tessitore was coming to the WWE as a broadcaster, he showed up at on the countdown show alongside Michael Cole, and the announcement was made that as of September 2nd, Joe Tessitore would be the play-by-play voice for Monday Night Raw, which left a lot of people surprised because commentary on Monday Night Raw is so good right now between Pat McAfee and Michael Cole. Michael Cole also said that he would be moving over to SmackDown. Now, he said that a couple of times during SummerSlam too. I'm headed over to SmackDown. Pat McAfee never said he was headed over to SmackDown. Also, in the press release that originally came out about Joe Tessitore, it said that he would be joining a 3-man booth where it would be Tess, Wade Barrett, and Corey Graves. So it feels as though in September, the Raw commentary team will be Joe Tessitore, Corey Graves, and Wade Barrett. That's how I'm reading it right now. Interesting because I would have thought that the commentary duo they wanted on Monday Night Raw for Netflix would be Pat McAfee and Michael Cole. Now, College Game Day is about to start for Pat McAfee. I love stuff like this because there's just enough information that has been cemented that allows us to speculate wildly. And you know that's rule number 2. If you do rule number 1, which is watch the product, then you can speculate wildly, which is rule number 2, with a certain degree of responsibility. And that's what we're doing here. It makes me wonder if, because I would imagine that because Tess does other things, that maybe Mondays are better for him. Maybe on a Friday, he has to go do football or whatever on the weekend, and it makes it more difficult. I don't know if he's flying the private jets that Pat McAfee is flying. At the same time, Pat McAfee is not only doing his daily radio show on ESPN, but he's also going to start doing College Game Day again soon. So maybe this is something that they're preparing for, and maybe we do get a new partner for Michael Cole on SmackDown starting on, I guess it would be the Friday after. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. What's that? September 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th? Is September 6th is a Friday? It's my birthday. I hope so. Maybe I go to SmackDown. So yeah, I would imagine Cole starts SmackDown on September 6th. And I wonder who his partner will be. Will it be McAfee? Will it be somebody else? I don't think they'll have anybody on Raw doing double duty unless it's very temporarily, but I can't imagine it would be. So I guess that if that works out the way I've spelled it out there, I would imagine that means Corey Graves goes back to doing color commentary, which is great. I mean, he's great at play-by-play. He's great at color commentary. I think anything works. But when it comes to Tess, when it comes to Joe Tessitore, I think a lot of people have questions. You know, a lot of people know that the fact is that if you go back through everything, I'm trying to think of a sports broadcaster that came into the WWE and it worked out. Because I can't think of any, honestly. Like, whether it was Mike Adamle, whether it was Adnan Virk, whether it was Jimmy Smith, and this is no disrespect to any of them, it's just a different thing, you know? But all that said, I'm pretty excited about Joe Tessitore. And the reason why is because, you know, I mean, look, Mauro Ranallo worked out. Mauro Ranallo was a great WWE play-by-play guy, and he came from the world of combat sports. Joe Tessitore has had some great work, you know, not just in football, but in combat sports. Furthermore, those reports have come out that he's a big wrestling fan. And sometimes you hear that about people, and, you know, you're like, oh, are they just trying to butter up wrestling fans so that we'll give him a chance? No. I've had conversations with this guy about wrestling. We met at WrestleMania. I didn't even know he was coming in or anything like that. I just knew he was there. He was doing some interviews for ESPN and stuff like that, I think. But he's a huge wrestling fan. Like a big enough wrestling fan that he's listened to this show. Like a big wrestling fan. So the fact that he knows the product and he's had great experience doing combat sports stuff makes me extremely optimistic for this guy to come in. I'm very much looking forward to seeing and hearing what old Joe Tess has for the WWE universe. I think it'll be really, really, really cool. I'm excited about it. I'm also excited to hear what you have for all of us. The email address for Notsam Wrestling is notsamwrestling@gmail.com. Notsamwrestling@gmail.com. You want to email in, that's the email to send it to. Don't forget to make sure that, man, we've had a ton of emails come in even since the podcast started. Yes, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and check everything out. If you're listening on the audio feed, hopefully you listen to the Summerslam reaction emergency podcast. If not, as soon as we're done here, give that a listen. And then go over to the YouTube channel, which is the only spot that you'll be able to find the Drew McIntyre interview from Cleveland. Let's go to Dirk. First off, a huge thanks to Dom for turning a travel day from hell into a great day a few weeks ago. He was gracious enough to take a selfie when a nervous, bumbling me approached him as he was boarding his plane. The shocking part was that he was even flying at all. With his criminal history, I assumed he was on a no-fly list. He must get to the airport so early. Must give him such a tough time. On to SummerSlam, and I absolutely loved it. The only person I don't think came out stronger was Sami Zayn. Was this a way to cleanly separate him from the Intercontinental title picture for his next story? If so, who do you think is next for him? I think this had more to do with Braun Breaker than it did with Sami Zayn. I think that the context, I think this was like, no, this was about giving Braun Breaker the declarative victory, and I think a lot of work has been done. I don't think there's anything you could do to Sami Zayn at this point to make it so that we didn't believe in Sami Zayn. I think that everything Sami Zayn has done from, I'm going to say, late 20... I mean, honestly, you know when it starts? It starts when all of this starts to me. This era, for me, starts at WrestleMania 38. Cody Rhodes returns. Roman Reigns unifies the titles. Sami Zayn has one of the best WrestleMania matches of the two-night show with Johnny Knoxville. I think if you track Sami Zayn from Johnny Knoxville until now, that gives you the entire Bloodline run. That gives you the post-Bloodline with the angle at the Royal Rumble 2023. With the match at Elimination Chamber 2023. The Tag Team Championship match at WrestleMania 39. Coming off of that, building up to WrestleMania 40 when people were like, I don't know about this guy. Winning the Intercontinental title, being the guy to beat Gunther. Having the run that he's had for the last 4 months. I think that there is nothing you could do to make Sami Zayn look like anything besides a G based on the last 2.5 years. In terms, I do think that this is a clean break from the Intercontinental Championship. I do think that Braun Breaker moves on from Sami Zayn after this. I think Sami Zayn moves on as well. And I think a new story begins. Again, the idea of Sami Zayn being involved in whatever happens with the bloodline later this year, I think is very, very possible. I really wouldn't mind maybe Sami Zayn. Well, the Wyatt Sicks are baby faces, I guess. But if they're not strictly baby faces, I think Sami Zayn being haunted by the Wyatt Sicks when they're done with Gable could be interesting. I don't know. I'd have to really go through Raw. I'm kind of anxious to just hands off. Let's just kick back and enjoy and see what direction Sami Zayn goes in next. I have every faith it's going to be great. But I do think it's going to be new. I acknowledge you, my tribal podcast chief. I wanted to touch on the Gunther Priest match from SummerSlam. I think it was a solid match with a good story, but I think it could have been better if Damian Priest relinquished the title, then revealed the new champ as Damian Archer from Coach. Well, I think it's a stupid email. I don't even know what you're talking about. I got to proofread some of these, I think. Let's go to Jimmy, who writes in. Sam, first off, I want to acknowledge my podcast tribal chief. Second time writing in after listening for about 3 years, and I've been meaning to write in and ask this for a few months. I have a 2-part question. Okay, if you've been working on, first of all, you acknowledge me, which I appreciate. Second of all, 3 years you've been wanting to ask. Okay, all right, I'm gonna give you this. Okay, question 1. Have you been surprised that over the Drew CM Punk feud that there weren't more crowd reactions, cheers, chants for Drew? The reason I ask that, in my opinion, Drew has been on fire since 2024, or in 2024. And while I understand everybody's all excited about CM Punk being back, Drew has been the person keeping the feud going on another level with his trolling, facial expressions, and such, and has been more entertaining all around. Well, I think people will, that's an opinion. People agree or disagree. Like, there are plenty of people who have been loving what Punk's been doing. Punk's been doing great, great work in this story, as well as Drew. I think there is an appreciation for Drew. I think even the people that appreciate Drew kind of recognize that he's the heel in this story, and we're being cooperative as an audience in this era. We boo the bad guys, we cheer the good guys. And I also think, there ain't no booing CM Punk. He's not a villain. It's amazing that he's back. There is no booing CM Punk. So, no, I'm not surprised at all. First of all, CM Punk hasn't slipped once. There hasn't been any time during this rivalry where, if you're just watching without bias, if you don't like him, if you like Drew, whatever, but if you're watching without bias, there's no point where people have been like, oh, that's, what? I don't know about that, Punk. That hasn't happened. He hasn't slipped at all. Drew hasn't either. But because neither one of them have slipped, and they've both been able to return fire with fire, they've both captivated people, they've both gotten people engaged, it's gotten to a point where people are following the story, and they're on board with it. So I'm not surprised at all. 2, if you had to call it right now, is Drew McIntyre the WWE Wrestler of the Year? Yeah. And I mean, whatever you say, in terms of storytelling, character work, wrestling, and overall entertainment, I mean, yes. In 2024, right now, for the first 8 months, Drew McIntyre is WWE Wrestler of the Year. Yes. If I had to give that award to somebody right now for the last 8 months, 100% I'm giving it to Drew McIntyre. Yes. TJ writes in, just wanted to share my experience with Summerslam this year. My 7-year-old daughter isn't into wrestling. However, we had Summerslam all on while cleaning on Saturday. All of a sudden, the Rhea Liv promo reel played. She immediately started asking questions. Fast forward 10 minutes when Rhea slams her shoulder back into place. Rhea is a superhero to her now. From that point on, she was fixated on the entire PLE, capped by the huge return of our tribal chief. All I know is that this SummerSlam meant a little more to me because of that. What a show. I mean, that's it, right? When the kids start watching and it's organic and they're actually invested, there's literally nothing better on the planet. This leads me to ask, what was that one match for you? The one that immediately after watching you knew you were a lifer. Thanks for all that you do. It's a good question. I don't know if there, I mean, it was whatever the first match that I saw was. There was no soft launch into pro wrestling for me. I don't remember a time that I wasn't watching. The first story that I mean, it's around the same age as your daughter, you know, and I think that is the age, right? I think, you know, plenty of people were watching wrestling at 5 years old, whatever, and I was too. But in terms of like really it clicking in, I would have been about 7, and it was everything that was going on surrounding the buildup to WrestleMania 7. I remember the Hogan Slaughter stuff, but it was probably Macho Warrior. Like, Macho Man was really, you know, I liked Hogan as a kid, but in terms of having a first favorite wrestler that's my guy, it was Randy Savage. And the first thing I remember Randy Savage doing is, ironically, hitting the Ultimate Warrior with a scepter and costing him the championship at the 1990 Royal Rumble. But yeah, so I don't know. That's one of the first moments that I remember going like, I don't understand. How did the Ultimate Warrior lose the title? Why would Macho Man do that? Like, that's probably the singular moment. Macho Man costing the Ultimate Warrior the WWE Championship against Sergeant Slaughter is probably my first conscious memory of watching live. And I was probably not watching live because I doubt we bought the pay-per-view. I was probably watching Superstars of Wrestling and they were replaying it. But that was the angle. And I'm a story guy, so of course it was going to be an angle, not a match. But that was the angle that I remember first. Chris writes in, Sam, my question today, who was your MVP of SummerSlam? I got to give it to Dom. That smirk after doing what he did was everything. There was a lot of good performances at SummerSlam. You know, I think Dom was outrageously good. Rhea was very good, but that's to be expected. Braun Breaker stepped up to the plate. You know, I mean, obviously Roman Reigns. But you could argue that as much as, like, for me, that Rollins, Drew, Punk thing, like, everyone played their parts perfectly. I just loved. I thought that was an epic match. Like, I loved the story that was told in that match. Damian Priest might be that guy. Damian Priest might get my MVP. You know, he stepped up to the plate. I think that he's had his back to the wall for a little while, proving people that he's the performer that he says he is, that he's in the spot to be in. Yeah, I kind of feel like Priest might be that guy. I thought the match was great. I thought he stood in there with Gunther and had that match. Stuff that he did with Balor, like, I love that he didn't realize that Balor had interfered until he watched the replay. The replay's on the big screen. And so he watched the replay and he realized that Balor had interfered. You know I love it when the superstars watch the show. I love when they watch the show. And it's like, no, I saw it on the show last week. You completely betrayed me. I mean, it's on my DVR. Of course I watched it. Everybody saw it. Why would I not have seen it? And then choking Finn Balor and everything. Probably Priest, honestly, if I had to give one MVP. But I don't know. I guess Roman Reigns. He's my tribal chief. Jacob writes in, I acknowledge you, my podcast tribal chief, as you should, and I appreciate that. I've had this idea for the Cody Rock build for a while now, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Oh, I'll give them to you. The Rock appears on the first Raw on Netflix. Could be advertised or a surprise. I'm with that. He announces Cody's next title defense will be in the Royal Rumble match. I'm not down with that. I get that he's a board member and everything, but if you start making Rock have the ability himself, if Rock had the ability to just make matches, then why wouldn't he have just said, no, I'm fighting Roman Reigns at WrestleMania? Like, if he could just put Cody's title up for grabs at the Royal Rumble, then why wouldn't he just say, no, I'm going to fight Roman at WrestleMania? So that doesn't work at all for me. This puts Cody in a position where in order to win, he would have to become the first three-peat Rumble winner. The 30th entrant, of course, is the final boss. He wins and the title and takes it to WrestleMania. Just feeling real cheesy. This way, Cody is chasing on the road to Mania again and doesn't have to eat another pinfall loss to The Rock. I also believe a Rock title win will help the WWE push viewers to Netflix. The Rock doesn't need a belt to get people to watch Netflix. If The Rock's going to be on the show, they'll watch it. I mean, they're going to watch it anyway. But if The Rock's... First of all, he's already got the People's Championship. But no, Rock being WWE champion does not equate to more viewers. I don't think. I can't see them following up last year's road to WrestleMania with no twists and turns. And I think and then is what? The idea that Cody then beats The Rock at WrestleMania? No, dude. No. Not even a little bit. I'm not with it at all, actually. And people would see it coming a mile away. A mile away. It's like, okay, and then what? Cody goes and beats The Rock? And then Cody would, I mean, that would be the Cody beating The Rock to win the title back at WrestleMania compared to the moments that Cody has had at WrestleMania. It'd be his worst it'd be the least impactful WrestleMania moment that he's had in his last 4 years. It would be less impactful than the return, than the loss, than the win. It doesn't work for me. Ben writes in, love you and everything that you do. I appreciate that, Ben. The earth shook with Roman's return. I agree with that. For a while, I thought there was so much hype behind the return that it would inevitably be anticlimactic. But boy, was I wrong. There was no way it was ever going to be anticlimactic. No title, every ounce the aura. This is like Roman Reigns' aura era, okay? The aura that Roman has right now is not to even be attempted because you will hurt yourself trying to attain that much aura. I've never seen it before in my life, and I doubt we'll ever see it again. That's what Roman is working with right now. This is the aura era for Roman Reigns, and he can do no wrong. I love that he came out alone. Okay, me and you, buddy. I'm glad I mentioned that. I love the change in the music, and even though it was different, it was still immediately recognizable, and I feel like it made that moment even bigger than it would have been otherwise. There was this nice, like, slow realization. That's true. Cleveland was the perfect crowd. The pop was absolutely insane. I got hit with the full force of it, all the feelings, jumping up and down in my living room. I am over the freaking moon that our tribal chief is back. I mean, you should have seen me. I was embarrassing. I was so excited. Embarrassing. Ask Megan. Avik writes in, what's the haps from London? One thing is for sure, fans in the UK and outside the US are really dedicated. We stayed awake till 5 a.m. in the UK to watch SummerSlam live in a bar. That's some real one behavior. That's the type of behavior that makes me proud, Avik. When I hear you do something like that, you know what I say? You're the man. Question. Do you think you'd be as big a fan if you had to follow wrestling like fans in the UK, i.e. staying up late regularly, taking days off work when pay-per-views are on a Sunday? Us U.S. fans have it easy. No doubt about it, Avik, although I do watch AEW pay-per-views, and they basically go off at UK time in the United States. The short answer is yes, and the reason for that is my formidable years of being a WWE fan were in the UK. I lived in England from 1988 until 1992. So I fell in love with wrestling in the UK. I got my first pro wrestling Halloween costumes in the UK. I got my first Hasbro action figure because my dad took a business trip back to the US where he could actually find them and brought it home. Eventually we got them overseas, but not early. And this was like pre-internet UK. So it was even tougher. I was watching Sky Sports. The first live show I ever went to was Wembley Stadium. Okay? So I still, yes, short answer is yes. I think I'd be as big a fan. However, it would be extremely difficult to do a topical podcast. I will say that. Tyler writes in, I acknowledge you, my tribal chief. Hope you and your family are well. They are. Thank you very much. And thank you for the acknowledgement. Quick question. Will we ever get the Samantha Irvin, Notsam Wrestling intro? You had mentioned in the lead up to the 500th that we may get her intro as a one-off, but that ended up not happening. I know Howard Finkel will always be the GOAT. I would love to hear her version sometime. Thank you for all that you do. I mean, yeah, obviously I would love a Samantha Irvin intro, and I think we could pull it off. But I can't take the Fink out of my intro. I just can't. And the idea of having myself being introduced twice by two different ring announcers feels like a hat on a hat. Feels like it's too much. Yeah, I mean, I have those original Howard Finkel tape, but like Howard Finkel only cut one intro for me, and it was Welcome to Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. Like I've had to like cut around that audio every time that I've changed things up to make sure that Howard Finkel stays. From episode 1 to episode 511, that voice has brought us in. And just the idea, I mean, I am so grateful for the last 511 weeks that Howard Finkel introduces my wrestling podcast. That's crazy. Maybe we get Samantha Irvin to do something for the emergency podcast. I don't know. Let's brainstorm together within the Not Same community and come up with something. Because I would like her to be represented because, let's face facts. Howard Finkel, for me, will always be number one. I'm a certain generation. It is what it is. Like, somebody could come and be 10 times better than Howard Finkel. He'll still be number one for me. However, Samantha Irvin is next up. She's the number 2 GOAT. It is what it is. I know she's new in the sense that she's here now, but she's the second GOAT. It is what it is. That's wild that right now they have a GOAT ring announcer in Samantha Irvin. They have a GOAT play-by-play guy in the sense of Michael Cole. I mean, and everybody else is, you know, in the conversation. We could have GOAT conversations about the other stuff, but 2 GOATs confirmed. Irvin, Cole. Darren writes in, first time writing in to say, I have feelings, I would like to express them. I've been watching wrestling since I was probably 2 years old. Okay, you see what I mean? And I remember watching the first WrestleMania. If you watched the first WrestleMania when you were 2, you do not remember that. Unless you're like Terrence Howard or something. You don't remember that. However, I'll keep going. And I remember the pop that Hogan got when he slammed Andre. That was at the 3rd WrestleMania. I remember watching the first WrestleMania. I remember the pop that Hogan got when he slammed Andre. That was the 3rd WrestleMania, not the 1st. Come on, dude. That pop last night when Roman Reigns came back and took out Solo to help Cody, biggest pop I've ever heard. This is why I love wrestling. That's a big statement. That may be some recency bias. I've loved wrestling as long as I can remember. If I had a choice between going to the Super Bowl or WrestleMania, I go to WrestleMania. 100%. Are you kidding me? 10 times out of 10. I've been to, how many WrestleManias have I been to? Let's see. I went to 20. I went to 24. And then, seeing if I went to any of the other 20s. I went to 30. Oh, yeah. And then, yes, went to 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. Obviously not 36, not 37, 38, 39, 40. I've been to 12 WrestleManias. And if somebody was like, you will get to go to your 13th WrestleMania or the Super Bowl, 13th WrestleMania every time. Well, maybe just the one time because it wouldn't be my 13th time anymore. I will someday, and I will someday. I appreciate you, Sam, very, very much. You seem like an awesome dude. I am an awesome dude. I appreciate you noticing that. Thank you so much for everything that you do for people that don't know what the F they're talking about. Now all we got to do is wait for Jimmy and Jay to come back. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's right. I can't wait for the Usos to come back. Last email here. Last email. A lot of feelings. Let's go to Mark. What up, Mark? Good day, Sam. Might as well called last night Summer Sam, as you called it all from beginning to end. Dude, I've been calling all this stuff, okay? Like, if you actually listen to this podcast every single week and you remember everything that I say, like some of this stuff, it's like months later. It's like, oh yeah, Sam said that was going to happen. It's awesome. Curious of your take on WWE's choice to make the stadium very dark last night. Not a very colorful Summerslam. From a lighting and pyroless standpoint, seems the stadium events near the highway tend to have less pyro, but the darkness in the stadium almost made me forget they were in a stadium at times. Everything counts. 5 out of 7 heels took the win last night, purposefully theming or just WWE experimenting. Thank you, King Sam. Well, I appreciate it. I think that to answer your last question, I don't think that they went out and said, let's have all the heels win. I think that it just happened to be a scenario where the heels made sense to win in the stories that are being told. I think they also probably knew they had the Roman moment at the end. They had enough there that they could afford to have all these heels win and have these stories move logically in that way. I think that the darkening of the stadium was done on purpose for a look, for that championship fight feel, as it didn't really happen until the end of the night, as for most of the pay-per-view, the natural light lit up the whole building. So I think that was it. But I appreciate the email. I appreciate all of you guys hanging out today, being a part of Notsam Wrestling. Don't forget the Drew interview. Don't forget the SummerSlam reaction pod. Don't forget Fanatics Fest in a couple of weeks. We'll see you there. Have a good one, everybody.